Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of the hour. Authorities say people attack and damage a provincial governor's office in southern Iran after days of economic protests. The incident occurs in Fassa as officials report doors and glass destroyed while unrest continues. China's President Xi Jinping says reunification with Taiwan is unstoppable in his New Year message from Beijing. He speaks after China ends live-fire military drills around the island, according to state media. Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist set to become New York mayor, plans a midnight oath at a historic subway site, followed by a public ceremony. He raises $2.6 million for the transition land events, with Bernie Sanders expected to take part in the inauguration. Russia launches an overnight drone attack on Odessa, damaging homes and infrastructure and injuring 4 people, including 3 children. Authorities say the Black Sea port region has repeatedly been targeted through the war. The EU's top diplomat says Russia is making unfounded claims that Ukraine targeted President Volodymyr Zelensky's residence with drones. She says the allegation is a deliberate distraction aimed at derailing efforts to advance a peace process. The US Justice Department says it still has 5.2 million pages of Epstein-related files to review and needs hundreds of lawyers to complete the work. Officials warn the process will push the final release far beyond the original congressional deadline. Thailand releases 18 Cambodian soldiers under a new ceasefire after weeks of deadly border clashes. Both sides say the truce eases tensions after fighting that killed over 100 people and displaced hundreds of thousands. China says it will impose an additional 55% tariff on certain beef imports from countries including Brazil, Australia and the US that exceed set quotas from January the 1st. Beijing says investigations found imports were damaging its domestic industry. We start this hour in the Middle East, and the military has said that Israeli forces began demolishing 25 buildings in the Nur Shams refugee camp in the northern West Bank. These structures, which are home to around 100 Palestinian families, were targeted as part of an operation against armed groups, according to Israeli authorities. Bulldozers and cranes tore through the buildings early on Wednesday, sending dust into the air as residents watched from a distance. The military cited ongoing counterterrorism efforts in the area, saying northern Samaria has become a significant center of terrorist activity operating from densely populated civilian areas. The demolitions are part of a broader strategy to improve military access within refugee camps and come as Israel continues operations to dismantle Palestinian armed groups in the West Bank since earlier this year. Okay, joining us now is John Rossomando, the president of Viking Research Associates and a geopolitical analyst. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for joining us. Israel says this is part of a counter-terrorism strategy. Does demolishing entire residential structures genuinely improve security? Of course, Israel's been known to do this prior to when it builds new settlements. John, what's your thoughts on the situation?
Well, my thoughts on this is that it has proven to be a completely ineffective strategy at deterring terrorism. As on the contrary, it serves as a recruitment tool for Palestinian terrorist organizations and also a propaganda victory in the West that undermines Israel's standing in the world.
And do you think actions like this raise questions under international law? Of course, Israeli occupation in the West Bank is very real. Many, international law sees this as illegal. The United Nations sees it as illegal. The international community does. The settlements that are being built in what people call Judea and Samaria.
Let's put it this way. International law is just something that people trot out there, but you always have to look at what is in Israel's interest. I mean, clearly, as you say, the settlements, but Israel's standing in the world is compromised by the imagery. I mean, Israel hasn't been able to justify that demolishing these homes, which has been a policy for decades, has been effective at stopping recruitment and terrorist activities.
And of course, John, this comes as the Trump administration says and reportedly speaks to Benjamin Netanyahu's team in regards to annexing the West Bank. It's the ongoing settlement of violence in the West Bank. This shows signs that Israel is not slowing down its operations there. What are your thoughts on Donald Trump's takes on Israeli action in that Palestinian territory?
He's not wrong. I mean, the Israelis are not leaving. I mean, they've been enhancing their settlement because, the Israeli nationalists see Judea and Samaria, as they call the West Bank, the heartland of Judaism. So they're not going to leave.
John Rossomando, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. We now move on and over to Europe, and President Vladimir Putin has said that Russia believes it will win in Ukraine during his New Year address as the war enters its 4th year. The conflict has taken a heavy human toll. Military deaths on both sides are estimated in the tens or hundreds of thousands. Millions of Ukrainians too have been displaced. Russia reportedly occupies around 1/5 of Ukraine and has carried out nearly daily missile and drone strikes. These attacks targeted energy and civilian infrastructure, leaving towns like Vostogrod near Kiev without power for days. Meanwhile, Moscow has accused Ukraine of launching dozens of drones at Putin's lakeside residence in Novgorod region on December the 28th. The Russian Defense Ministry has called it a terrorist attack and also released video of a damaged drone found in the surrounding forests. But Putin has not publicly commented on the incident yet, while Moscow has also not revealed his location during the alleged drone strikes. The European Union has accused Moscow of using the drone claim to derail peace negotiations. Coming to the US-led diplomacy to end the war, it has gained a bit of pace. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to attend a January the 6th summit in France after holding talks with US President Donald Trump in Florida recently. However, experts say that Russia has shown no sign of relaxing its maximalist demands. Joining us now is Dan Perry, a world affairs analyst. He joins us live from Tel Aviv. Dan, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, as we reach the end of 2025, how do you analyse where both sides stand in this conflict? Of course, now we're concluding our first year with Donald Trump as the US president.
Well, we're headed towards 4 years since Putin launched the war, and I think it's fair to say that he did not expect to be where he is 4 years later, which is having occupied about 1/5 of Ukraine, which is territory mostly Russia already dominated at the beginning of the war. The war continues, shows no signs of abating, and I think at this point can basically be characterized as a war of attrition. More than anything else, the front lines haven't significantly moved beyond where they were really 2 or 3 years ago. The main change in 2025 is that the US has confoundingly and almost absurdly a leadership that clearly has more sympathy in its core for Putin and for Zelensky and for Russia than for Ukraine. That's big. And the question headed into 2026 is whether the Europeans can make up whatever shortfall results, because the US hasn't yet completely wound down its aid to Ukraine. A lot of that was allocated even before, but there's a chance that in 2025 that may occur. 2026 rather.
Yeah.
In 2026 that may occur.
Yeah, and Dan, in this address, Putin says that Russia will win. What does victory realistically look like here? US intelligence reports have just come out that Russia's aims in Ukraine have not changed, and Putin still intends to take all of the country?
Well, a lot of the world believes that Putin might suffice with part of Ukraine occupied by Russia and annexed by Russia, and some sort of domination over the rest of it, perhaps by denying it security guarantees or engineering a pro-Moscow government in Kiev in the next election. The usual Russian shenanigans. Of course, it's reasonable to think otherwise, that he won't stop until he occupies all of Ukraine, but it's also conceivable that he's figured out that that isn't likely anytime soon, as long as the West continues to support Ukraine. One possibility is for Russia to simply declare victory with the current front lines. It may be sufficing with the fact that it really does look like Ukraine will never join NATO. In other words, he controls the terms of debate because this whole thing is an invention of Russia. All of it from beginning to end is what Russia wants and what Russia fantasizes about and what Russia lies about. So that's one version of victory. Another, of course, is that, the U.S. pulls back its aid for Ukraine, denies them intelligence sharing. The Europeans fail to step up, and maybe the front line moves further west. And then again, he could conceivably declare victory, or he could press on, but having achieved gains on the ground. I have to say, it is so absurd to hear him wishing well to the Russian people in the context of victory in the war, because even if they do a little bit better in the war, even if they fully win the war, Russia has suffered so spectacularly much. The Russian people have been battered so badly by Putin's colossally misconceived war and absolutely ridiculous policy. They've lost 250,000 men. 1 million people have emigrated. The economy has been thrashed in the sense that it's currently fully a war economy. Its manufacturing is down. Real production is down. I'm not talking about production of munitions. Its trade with the world has become a joke, fully dependent on energy exports to China and India, basically. Russia's a sad shell of itself and of what people hoped for 26 years ago on this day, when Boris Yeltsin, on December 31st, 1999, handed the reins to his new and young Prime Minister, Putin.
Indeed. There's been two significant updates this week. The Trump and Zelensky meeting, which saw, of course, possible security guarantees for Ukraine. So it looked positive for Zelensky then. But then the Russian president called up Donald Trump directly and informed him of an alleged drone strike on his residence in Novorossiysk. Do you think that recent play by Putin has completely countered Zelensky and the gains that were made at his meeting earlier this week?
Short answer is no. I don't think it was necessarily that call that completely countered Zelensky, but it had an effect because Trump was sounding different after the call, and Trump complained about the supposed attack during his summit with Netanyahu, of all people. I think judging what Trump will do by what Trump says is a bit of a fool's errand. His speeches and statements are frequently so incoherent. He's obviously not committed to speaking the truth necessarily. I think if we look at the overall picture, the music that you have heard from Trump for years now, it's very clear that he likes authoritarians and basically even dictators. He somehow admires strongmen. He expressed his appreciation of Syria's new president in those terms, of Erdogan, who has turned a sort of a democracy into an autocracy in Turkey in those terms. He speaks of Putin glowingly as a strong person. He's never spoken that way of Zelensky. Zelensky became the only world leader in my memory to be kicked out of the White House during 2025. So I think it's clear that Putin can benefit from a lot of sympathy from the White House for his basic goal, which is at the very least to seize part of Ukraine and also to dominate Ukraine, because Trump believes in spheres of influence by large and powerful countries. He believes that everything is interests and values have no purpose. He is not necessarily an enemy of what Putin's trying to do, and that is a major strategic benefit that Putin received in 2025. It's the one thing, but it's a big thing.
Indeed. Dan Perry, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to talk to you on these issues. We now move on to our next story, and according to Turkish government officials, Turkish authorities have detained 125 suspected Islamic State members in a series of simultaneous raids across 25 provinces. The nationwide operation is part of heightened security measures ahead of Christmas and New Year celebrations. In recent days, hundreds of suspects have been taken into custody to prevent possible attacks. And earlier this week, a raid in the northwestern province of Yalova turned deadly when suspected IS militants opened fire on police, killing 6 suspects and 3 officers. Interior Minister Ali Khalifa said the raids were carried out by police and units in major cities, including Istanbul and Ankara, vowing zero violence for those threatening Turkey's security and unity. Alison Mutler joins us now. She's the former Associated Bureau Chief in Romania. She joins us live from the capital in Bucharest. Alison, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Thomas.
Pleasure. Of course, it is a situation in Turkey which that's been occurring simultaneously in 25 different provinces in the country. How much do we know about the threat that the country faces from Islamic State?
Well, the Islamic State had its heyday, so that's probably not the right word, but it was at its height of its power in 2014 when it controlled large swathes or it controlled territory in Syria and Iraq. And since then, there were concerted efforts to quell them, to push them down, and they worked. And rather, the world's eye was taken off the Islamic State. It was considered it was defeated or it had been rendered inefficient. And quietly, they have been building themselves up particularly in this year, if you look at the intelligence reports, and we had that attack which was Islamic State inspired in Australia, and also in Syria with the US against the US military. So while they do not control territory as they did 11 years ago, they have cells across various Muslim countries, Islamic countries, including Turkey. So they have been a threat in the shadows, but obviously this latest raids today across 25 provinces, obviously very well coordinated and carried out very efficiently. There's been a lot of intelligence gathering going on what they're doing, and this was done specifically ahead of the new year, because we shouldn't forget the last deadly attack or the most memorable attack by the Islamic State was in Istanbul in 2017, in which I think 39 people died. So Turkey did not or does not want a repeat of that. So it is a threat, but it's a threat in the shadows. It's not as obvious as it was in 2014 when they controlled territory in the Middle East.
Indeed. Did you think Turkey's geography, straddling Europe and the Middle East, does it make it uniquely vulnerable to ISIS networks?
Yes, because although Erdogan is, as your former guest Dan Perry said, he is like an authoritarian. But Turkey attracts a lot of foreign tourists. It likes to present itself as a bit more open. It is an Islamic country, but there are a lot of Christians there as well. The head of the Orthodox church is in Istanbul. So that does create other problems, and I think that the Islamic State would find it easier to hide out there. And it's quite a big country. It was 25 provinces. They conducted raids in Izmir, in Ankara, in Istanbul, etc., etc. So yes, I think because it is not a dictatorship the way that Saudi Arabia is or Iran is, it is a little bit easier for the Islamic State to set up cells there, which they obviously have been doing.
Alison Mutler, thank you very much for joining us. Have a happy new year, and thank you for taking the time. We now move on to our next story, and emotional scenes unfolded in Phnom Penh today as 18 Cambodian soldiers returned home after being released by Thailand following a ceasefire deal that ended weeks of deadly border fighting. The soldiers had been held as prisoners of war for 5 months after clashes along the contested Thai-Cambodian frontier. Their release fulfills a key condition of the truce agreement signed by both countries over the last weekend. The ceasefire was formalised by the defence ministers of Thailand and Cambodia at the same border checkpoint, where the soldiers were handed over. Thailand has said that the release was a goodwill step and a part of confidence building under international humanitarian principles. Moreover, Cambodia's defence ministry has also said that the move opens the door for peace, stability and the normalisation of relations. Now, as the clock struck midday, the quaint Croatian town of Fužine erupted into cheers, music and icy splashes, marking its unique tradition of welcoming the new year long before the stroke of midnight. The celebration, rooted in a 26-year history, saw revelers dance to live music, count down to noon, and even plunge into icy waters of Lake Bajar, where the temperature hovered at a brisk 1.5 degrees Celsius. What began as a local novelty is now widespread across Croatia, with towns hosting their own midday festivities featuring music, fireworks and communal gatherings. In a unique celebration, divers in Zagreb put traditional fur-free down all the way to the bottom of the Lake Jarun. Divers from the Underwater Sports Society took the decorated Christmas tree in a Santa Claus suit, hat and beard into the depths of the lake on the outskirts of the Croatian capital, a club tradition that dates back 10 years. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.